All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is the, I want to say second edition of the E&J podcast, but really it's more like the 1.5 because it's going to be a short one today. To our one listener out there, we appreciate you so much and thank you for tuning in. So we're going to get into a continuation. Our first episode, the debut, our first baby was about the NBA Finals. At the time we recorded it, it was a 2-0 series for the Warriors. The Cleveland Cavaliers had not yet won a game. We both predicted that they would win that game. Then I went away for a little bit. I was able to see the games though. And since then, a week later, right, exactly a week later, unless I put this up tomorrow, the series is now 3-2 Golden State. And tonight is the sixth game, correct? Yeah, because 3-2, sixth game. So tonight you have the Golden State Warriors against the Cleveland Cavaliers, 3-2 lead Golden State back in Cleveland. And we're going to get into what we think about the game and also what we think about the series at this point. But before we do that, E, how you doing, man?
I can't complain. It's always good. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad that we got this second edition going, or 1.5 going. I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get my co-host in again. I'm the J, he's the E, and we're going to get into this now. We were just playing some Gears of War 3, but I wanted to take a moment, killing horde mode. Well, it was killing us too, but I wanted to take the time to get into the fact that I'm not pleased with LeBron James. And I kind of, just maybe, I guess you could put it as want to rip him a new asshole. That might be the appropriate terminology. But so here's my problem. I've never been a LeBron James hater. Have you ever known me to be a LeBron James hater?
Not that I'm aware of, but I haven't seen it recently.
Fair enough. I've never been a LeBron James hater. I, in fact, rooted for a lot of those Miami Heat teams that went to the finals. I think maybe I didn't root for him and for them when they fought. Again, the whole war thing going on in my mind. When they played Oklahoma City. Because I really like Durant, I like Westbrook, I like all those guys. Ibaka. But outside of that, I even rooted for the Heat against the Spurs because I like LeBron. And it still happens to this day. He gets criticized way more than he should. And I don't like that. And he's a good dude. He's a stand-up individual. But with that being said, we're looking at a 3-2 series. And in my opinion, it's a 3-2 series because he bitched about Draymond Green ironically calling him a bitch. Now I got a question for you, E. On a list of things that could offend you, that you could get called, where is bitch?
It's tough. In the middle of a game, like, I'm not really thinking about it. It actually, like, hypes me up to keep wanting to, like, continue or be more competitive. If you're in the middle of an argument with somebody, like, depending on the connotation, it might get under my skin a little bit, but it's not something that, like, I dwell on after that moment is over.
Exactly my point. Now, look. In the heat of the game, there are going to be plenty of things said on that court. Plenty. A lot of them, it's whatever, you could brush it off. Some of them are going to stick with you, particularly in that moment, are going to really piss you off. I understand that. This is why I was bothered by his comments. I didn't know what Draymond Green had called him. Like, I had no idea what he had said. So all I had heard was the post-game conference, in which LeBron is talking about, I'm a family man, and I feel like there are certain things you just don't say to a family man, or about a man's family. Like, there's certain lines you don't cross. So I'm thinking, maybe Draymond Green said something about his kids. Maybe Draymond Green said something about his wife. Maybe he said something about him as a father. When you start bringing the family into it and bringing that component into it, I'm thinking, he might have said some really foul stuff, Draymond. So I'm with LeBron, not knowing what had been said. To find out, he's complaining about being called a bitch. A bitch? Like, that's it? He just calls you a bitch and that's a line that gets crossed? It might not even just been a bitch. He might have just said, you're playing like a bitch. That's a line being crossed? It's mind-boggling to me. That's definitely not the first time he's been called a bitch on the court. By Draymond Green or anybody else, probably.
In fact, just to throw this in there, during the time when he was going up against one of the fiercest competitors that I've seen in my time, in KG. KG and Rondo and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen had some words for him. And especially in like those heated playoff series, there were times where like LeBron and Kevin Garnett were probably jawing at each other. So that's not the first or last time that he would be called out of his name or get in like a verbal altercation on the court.
Absolutely. And so it makes me wonder. And I'm conflicted in that when it happened, you did see an immediate reaction from LeBron. He was upset. You heard the post-game conference comments. They seemed legit. But at the same time, it's so thin-skinned, right? That you called a bitch and now you're talking about there are certain lines you don't cross and you're a family man and this and that. That it's almost as if knowing that Draymond, everybody knew about the flagrant, that he was only one away from being suspended. Knowing that, it's like you took advantage of the situation for a competitive edge. And normally I'm fine with that, but when that comes at the cost of a player being suspended off of something that in my opinion should not have been deemed a flagrant is absolutely ridiculous. And to me, it doesn't shed well, right? It doesn't shine a bright light on him. And anything, it casts a dark shadow that I would think a lot of people are like, really, that's what you're complaining about? That's how you're going to handle that situation just because he called you a bitch?
Well, just to add as a point, so we're not completely sure, or at least I'm not completely sure, when the name calling happened, either before or after they hit the ground. But as to add more information to the story, LeBron did step over him, which caused a reaction from Draymond, which drew the flagrant foul. Excuse me. So it wasn't just necessarily the name calling and then the ref was like, oh, he teched him up. But it was more of like what happened after the play, after LeBron stepped over him. Just as clarification for people who haven't watched the game or didn't see what actually happened.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I didn't clarify because I'm assuming if you are stumbling across this, you saw the game, or even if you didn't see it, you saw the highlights in which you know in some way or another about the entire altercation. But to put it in perspective, and I'm glad my co-host just said that, LeBron sets a hard screen on Draymond. Draymond falls down. He sets a hard screen and maybe even pushes Draymond down a little bit. So Draymond goes down. It could have been called a foul. And probably should have been called a foul. Because I think it was more than just a screen. I think he also used his arm to push Draymond Green down. Draymond Green is on the floor. He starts to get up. LeBron James steps over him. Now, there's a debate as to whether or not he did that intentionally. As far as I'm concerned, only LeBron knows that. He's not the type of player who would typically do that. But again, in the heat of the moment and in the heat of all that competitive nature, is it possible that he did intentionally? Yeah, and I'm inclined to believe that he did. But it's possible that he didn't. Either way, Draymond's getting up and he feels something on the back of his head. So he has no idea whether LeBron's doing it intentionally or not, and he reacts. I don't see how that's unreasonable. I don't see how that would draw flagrant. He swings his hand at LeBron, not swing as in a punch, but kind of like swings to backhand LeBron, kind of like to slap him on the back to say, yo, what the hell's wrong with you? Misses, doesn't make contact, and then they just get into some pushing and shoving, and apparently, according to Skip Bayless, at one point, Draymond hit LeBron in the nuts. I didn't see that. Maybe it did happen. I've heard if he did, it was like really lightly, it might have been inadvertent, who knows. But that's all that goes on. The refs blew it. I don't know if they called anything. I don't believe they did. I think they later issued the flagrant to Draymond, and then they issued a technical to LeBron. But because of that, you get the guy suspended. And here's my thing. Now he's suspended. You guys play, and LeBron, who had been struggling in this series by his standards, a lot of 25, maybe 27, 28-point games, one 19-point game. Solid numbers for most other players, not for him, when you're the go-to guy and recognized as the greatest player in the world. And now with no Draymond, you want to show up, drop 40 or 42, however many it was.
41.
41, all right? So drop 41 points, and everybody's talking about, oh, look at how amazing he's playing. Look at how he showed up for this last game. Yeah, it makes a difference when you don't have Draymond and Iguodala collapsing on you when you're driving. So people are beefing him back up, and I'm like, get the hell out of here, man. I'm not impressed. Kyrie, on the other hand, absolute stud. Incredible performance. One of the best offensive performances I've seen in a long time in the finals. I mean, he was spectacular. He was phenomenal. Just showcasing all that talent. But go ahead.
And so on the back end, I'll add a different perspective to this. So
please.
LeBron, whether or not his intentions were to get Draymond suspended, we don't know. We're just speculating. But Draymond suspended at this fact for Game 5, regardless of whether or not it was intentional, you still had to come out and perform. And not to we're not in the business of discrediting anybody, but LeBron did show up and he did perform the way that he was expected to. He didn't have that additional defensive pressure with Draymond and Iguodala collapsing, but he showed up when he needed to in a season-ending, in a series-ending game, potential series-ending game. He showed up when he was supposed to. Our first podcast, I was more or less critical on Kyrie, saying that he needed to show up, and he did exactly what I've been suggesting at or hinting at in this week's span. The first 2 games, he averaged 18 or 19 points, and then in these last 3, before tonight's game, he's averaged 35. So it's been an amazing turnaround. He's finally showing up. Now, I can't say the same thing for Kevin Love. So the big 3 is combined for 84 points, right? Mm-hmm. So you have LeBron, who showed up and did what he was supposed to do, had 41. Kyrie, who showed up, did what beyond expectation and showed just how good of a player and emerging starter he is, drops 41. My man Kevin Love came out and laid a complete donut again and had 2 points. So I was wrong with some of the speculation that I had last week, saying that like J.R. Smith wasn't as effective. They left him in, and he's caught fire somewhat. Kyrie's caught fire through like the midst of speculation whether he should start or not. Under my scrutiny, under anybody else who's like sort of doubted where his mind was at and where his game was at in the midst of these finals. But Kevin Love has yet again just failed to show up in these finals. And for a guy who's making, always get it confused between his contract and Tristan Thompson's contract. One has $110 million. I think Kevin Love is the one with $110 million, and Tristan Thompson with $80. But for a guy that's making $110 million, 2 points in a finals game is unacceptable. Yes, I know he was on the unfortunate end of a concussion for the game prior, and then yes, he's coming off the bench. But 2 points, come on, you got to do better. Like, you at one point in your career, you were deemed in the upper echelon of NBA players. Some considered you like in an MVP race. Some considered you within the top 10, top 20. And you just go out and it's like you're absent. You're an absentee. You don't show up. You don't score. You keep something's just not clicking. I don't know if he's hurt and we're not hearing about it. I I don't know if his head's just not here, but whatever it is, I pose this question now to my co-host. Do you think that they continue to bench Kevin Love in favor of either Tristan Thompson or Richard Jefferson?
Okay, before I answer that question, I appreciate you saying that we're not trying to discredit anybody and taking the high road, but let me make it clear. I'm discrediting LeBron James, pal. All right, no. I'm half facetious. Here's my thing. What I'm saying, I know it sounds like I'm bitter, and that's because I am, admittedly. But what I'm saying is he did have a great game, 41 points. I mean, come on, that's a great game. But I'm taking it with a grain of salt. That's my overarching point there. Yeah. Because I don't think he intended to get Draymond out of the game, as in that's the whole starting the foul and stepping over Draymond to piss him off. Like, from that angle, no, that was on the heat of the moment. That wasn't premeditated at all. But I think he tried to take advantage of Draymond being in a bad situation because of that, by then adding on to that his complaints. Now, to get back to your question, do I think they start anybody over Love, or should they start anybody over Love?
So, would you start, if you were Tyronn Lue, do you start somebody over Kevin Love going into Game 6
Okay.
tonight?
Yes, I do. And the two names you brought up, Timofey Mozgov, Richard Jefferson.
It was Richard Jefferson and
Mozgov, right?
No, Tristan Thompson.
Thompson? Okay.
Thompson.
But Thompson's going to start anyway, isn't he, at the 5?
He might be at the, depending on how they run their system. I don't know whether Kevin Love would be at the 4 or 5, but it's left up to interpretation.
Okay, so here's the deal. I start Richard Jefferson, in the place of Kevin Love, yes. And here's why. The reason that I'm starting Richard Jefferson over Kevin Love is because, like you said, Kevin Love only had 2 points. Kevin Love, with all the 6'10" frame body that he has, is for some reason chilling out on the wing like he's Klay Thompson. And I understand he can knock down those jumpers, because he absolutely can. But the Cleveland Cavaliers don't need you to be another jump shooter, especially if you're not taking the jump shots. If you're going to sit out the wing, but you're only going to score 2 points and not contribute a whole bunch of threes, then what the hell are you doing? Wasting your 6'10" frame for no reason. Richard Jefferson, every time I see this man go into the game, he's taking it to the rack like he's LeBron. Taking it to the rack tougher than LeBron. Now, granted, we have to put everything in perspective. When LeBron goes to the rack, he's getting double teamed by Draymond and Iguodala. So, whereas Richard Jefferson's taking it to the rack, and it's usually one-on-one. But Richard Jefferson's taking it to the hoop. He's taking it aggressively. He's not taking it and trying to flop and, missing shots to try and draw a foul. He's taking it up there to get it in the basket. And my man is balling. I think, shoot, if the Warriors had someone like him, besides Draymond, another guy with that type of mentality on their team, this series would already been over. I think even without Draymond in the game. Because I love the way Richard Jefferson's playing right now. I would start him. He's giving you great drives to the basket. He can even pop the J every now and then. So I would start Richard Jefferson. I love the way he's playing. I think he's playing way harder than Love. Like you said, we sit Love. It's not that Love doesn't go in at all. We find time to put Love in because he can still hit those perimeter shots, but he's not getting most of the starting time out on the floor, because if he's not making those shots on the perimeter, he sure as hell ain't playing defense. What are you doing in there? You're not doing anything. So if I'm the Cavs tonight, like they did in Game 3, I would start Kyrie, of course, LeBron, Jefferson. You can keep JR in there, see what he does, and Tristan Thompson at the 5. So, yeah, go ahead.
So then, for tonight's game, flip side, for the Warriors, how would you run your offense and sort of get back on track, knowing, well, if I'm understanding correctly, that Bogut is out for Game 6. Draymond's back, Bogut is out. So how would you sort of shape your lineup to deal with the newly found emergence of the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Okay. I don't want to immediately start small, even though they've proven that small lineup, while they'll give up a decent amount of offensive boards, can still be very effective in scoring points and can be very effective at containing LeBron. So they might be giving up inside rebounds and layups to Tristan Thompson, but by having Iguodala and Draymond in there to collapse on LeBron when he drives and to make him dish it out and possibly even strip him as he's dishing it out, or at least tip the pass so that it becomes a turnover. While I like that, I think you do have to at least start the game with somebody big so that when you insert them in later, they're not on cold feet. You're not just throwing them in on cold feet. So you start Festus Ezeli. I think it's the route you have to go because Mo Spates, while he can give you offense, definitely not the greatest defending center. He really needs to work on that because he could add a lot more if he gets his defense, if he increases it to a much higher level. So I would start Festus Ezeli, Green, of course Stephen Clay, and I would keep Harrison Barnes in there because you want him to get high and shoot the three because when he can hit that three and when he's another person who can hit that three, that takes some of the pressure off Steph and Clay. Now, look, man, I know they ended up losing by maybe 13 to 15 points or whatever the case was in that game, but for long stretches of that game, it was within reach, even without Draymond, because Clay was having a phenomenal game.
It was tied 61 all at half.
Yeah, exactly. Which shows you that, look, while LeBron and Kyrie had great offensive games, neither team had a great defensive game, with both scoring 61 points at halftime. I mean, that was just pure offense back and forth. And which again shows you from on the Golden State side the importance of Draymond Green. So, in the midst of all that, do I think Steph is... By the way, Steph, if you looked at his numbers without looking at his attempts, maybe about 28 points, decent amount of boards, I think, for a guy his size, and some assists. If you just looked at that, you would say, oh, he had a pretty good game. But the reality of the situation is when you look at his shot attempts and his hits, it wasn't a very good game. He was off. He had an off game. I don't think he has an off game tonight. I think Clay could start off rocky as hell, but at some point he'll hit his stride. It's just what he does. He'll have a good game. With Draymond and Iguodala both in there to work on LeBron, I think they'll limit him. I don't see another 40-point game from the King. So I do think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be a blowout either way. But I think you keep a big man in there initially, start Ezeli with Draymond, Harrison Barnes, Stephen Clay, and then all the other pieces you interchange depending on what's going on in the game.
So it seems to me as if you're leaning towards the Warriors winning tonight. Would I be correct?
I'm leaning toward the Warriors winning. I think they'll pull it off. It won't be easy because it is an away game, but they've shown they can win on the road. They've shown in the series they can win on the road. So with Draymond back, I think he'll definitely invigorate them and galvanize them and have them mentally prepared for this game to take it from Cleveland at home. And I think they'll win, but I'm not too comfortable with it.
If I had to take an educated guess, I would say that the Warriors do win tonight. It'll be close for the first 3 quarters. Warriors will pull away on one of their famous 5 to 6 minute stretches where they just seem to hit every shot that they take, whether it be from inside the paint, from half court, wherever they decide to shoot from, shots seem to fall for them. I think that they end up winning between 8 and 12 points. Maybe it might be some garbage time points depending on how big the league increases towards the end of the fourth quarter. But I think they do get between an 8 and a 12 point victory tonight. But that does lead to one question that I have. So we're both under the assumption that the Warriors win tonight. In your opinion, who wins the NBA Finals MVP? And it's with the given notion that Clay has shown up in spurts. Curry has been, not saying that he's disappeared, but he hasn't been in the same form that we've seen in the regular season and in the first stretch of the playoffs, give or take some wear and tear on his body from the long season or a nagging injury that we're not aware of, and then Iguodala being consistent but not being overly consistent enough for them to win a game, and Draymond with his apparent issues. So, who would you take as your NBA Finals MVP?
I was actually thinking of asking you that question, man. That is a tough one because with everything you listed out, Iguodala, by large, has been phenomenal. But just because he's probably been the most consistent player, does that make him the MVP per se? I don't know. Clay has definitely been great in spots, but again, the first game Golden State wins by a blowout. It wasn't because of Steph and Clay. The second game they win by a blowout. Still wasn't necessarily because of Steph and Clay. That was really mostly Draymond. Third game they get blown out. What do you do with that? Fourth game they win it mostly because of, again, Steph and Clay both did their thing, but I think down the stretch, probably more so because of Steph. They lose the next game up 3-1, and Clay showed up. Clay showed up big time. Steph, not really.
I think he had 37. If I'm right, Steph had 25, but it was on 8 of 21 shooting.
It's exactly.
And then Andre had like 15, and then everybody else sort of disappeared.
Exactly. Harrison Barnes, who was having some solid games, some under-the-radar solid games, and making his fair contributions to them winning the 3 games that they won, had a really bad game last game. Really bad. Just couldn't hit his shots for whatever reason. So, I honestly don't know. I think it's a big toss-up. I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how this game goes, if Iguodala can get it again. Because while the numbers aren't huge, he's doing so much of it on both ends. And you can't overlook that. At the same time, while it may be more apparent since mostly he's been one-on-one with LeBron, and then he gets the help from Green, they might look at Green and saying, well, he was missed and LeBron went off for 40. As great as Iguodala is as a defender, and as great a job as he's been doing, he's been getting that help from Draymond Green, who adds so much on defense that is so apparent in that one game that he was absent, and had that explosive game too. So maybe Draymond Green gets it. I'm going to say that depending on how the game goes tonight, at this moment, I would say my top 2 contenders are Green and Iguodala, should the Golden State Warriors win. And a third, I guess, would be Steph. But I can't see Steph winning it this year. Unless it goes to a Game 7 and he performs well tonight and well in the Game 7, then maybe.
I think we differ a little bit. And there were some performances that said, like, so the first couple games, I was thinking, like, Sean Livingston, if it was a clean blowout, that Sean Livingston might be in contention, but just because he's a bench player, he obviously doesn't garner enough minutes on the court to make him a viable candidate for Finals MVP. I am in agreement with you saying that the 2 front runners would be Draymond and Andre. I would lean more towards Andre as the Finals MVP and then Draymond as a runner-up. But our third place choice, we differ, and I believe that will go to Klay Thompson. Depending on solely based off if they win tonight. And this is not counting Game 6 tonight, but just going off of the first 5 games. We obviously don't know what's going to happen tonight. But if we're just looking at, and I'm basing my opinion just off of raw emotion and just appearance on the court, Andre's been everywhere. He hasn't had the greatest numbers, but he's been consistent across the board. And with this team, one of the keys to like their foundation is having consistency throughout their lineup, and there's always one person to fall back on, and like some days it's Clay, some days it's Steph, some days it's Draymond, and like everybody takes a turn sharing the limelight. But through this finals, it's been sort of like a tumultuous series, like either one team getting blown out or the other team getting blown out. There have been like, it's been hard to sort of like gauge who's been a clear-cut, definitive like NBA Finals MVP, but consistently Iguodala has done the small things that you needed to do to win an NBA championship. You get rebounds, you play defense, you pass to an open teammate. The ball never really sticks to your hands. You score when you have an opportunity, but you don't take more shots or take unnecessary shots. And he's been the most consistent out of everybody. Is he my clear-cut winner? Absolutely not, because he doesn't, in terms of like traditional or past NBA finals, like their standards about how they've been selected, whether it be points or whether it be just defensive prowess. He doesn't have any of those. Those intangibles haven't been seen like in this series, but I think that he's been the most consistent out of all of them, which garners him the NBA Finals MVP.
Yeah, I completely agree with that with Iguodala. Last year, the offensive points were higher. The defensive presence was about the same, maybe slightly greater, but I'm not even sure about that. I think it was relatively about the same. So it was more apparent for him to get the MVP because it wasn't 15 points about a game. It was like 19, 21, 22 points. So, yeah, I mean, but again, I agree. He's been the most consistent player without a doubt for the Warriors, in my opinion. I'm not mad at Klay as your number 3 as opposed to Steph for me. Not mad at that at all. Klay's been, at large, pretty damn great. And throughout the playoffs, you know, when I think he gets second fiddle a lot to Steph, and that's understandable. But if they didn't have Klay Thompson this year, they would have got knocked out by the Thunder without a doubt. That game 4 or 5, whatever it was, where he just went off hitting ridiculous shots and nothing but net. Not even rattling them in, just swish every time. That was incredible.
I think that was game 4 because they went on. No, yeah, it might have been like. I'm getting the series mixed up, but it might have been like game 4 or 5. So
yeah, whichever it was. So yeah, I'm not mad at that. I have no problem with that at all. But yeah, I think we're. Do you have anything else? Because we might wrap this up right about there.
I think that's it for my final prediction. Just to state it again, I think the Warriors win between an 8 and 12 point victory, and my NBA Finals MVP goes to Andre Iguodala.
Good stuff. That's very good stuff. As for me, I'll just repeat. Look, I don't consider myself a LeBron hater. I've rooted for him in the past. I still like the guy, but I cannot lie to you and tell you that I had no issue with the way he handled that game, just that post-game press conference. I understand that different people have different sensitivities and that, you never know what exactly is going to set somebody off. And so that's completely unpredictable. But at the same time, you got called something you didn't like. You practically cried to the media. I know he didn't actually cry, but you complained to the media. And that takes an effect on what wasn't really a big foul. And the guy gets suspended. I mean, really? It's like, you know what, LeBron? Stop being a bitch. Okay? Put your big boy pants on. Go out to the next game. And you don't like what he said to you? Embarrass him on the court. But for me, it came across as weak. He added, fuel to the fire, gets Draymond suspended, then drops 40, and we're supposed to kiss his ass. Was it a great performance? Yes. Was he aggressive? Yes, he was. Was he making jump shots that I didn't think he would make so many of? Absolutely. He had a phenomenal shooting game. I don't think he's going to have another shooting game like that in these finals. But, yeah, he was special that night. No doubt about it. But the way he handled that situation rubbed me the wrong way. And yes, I'm bitter. And because of that, I would really love for the Warriors to beat the Cavaliers tonight handily. I don't think it'll necessarily be handily, but I would love for them to beat them handily. So that with like 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, it's over. And LeBron knows it's over and it's all over his face. That's what I would like to see tonight, but we'll see. I do think the Warriors will win. But again, I'm not the most confident in that prediction. I'm not at all underestimating Cleveland tonight. Kyrie Irving is a bad man. And while I think LeBron won't be as productive because Draymond and Iguodala will be in there to double team him, the Golden State better come up with an answer on Kyrie because Kyrie's liable to drop 40, 45, 50 on any night. That's the level of talent that young man has. He's phenomenal. So there it is. Thanks for listening. This is a bit of a shorter episode, but we just want to get our thoughts on the finals out of the way. Next time we talk to you, regardless of who wins tonight, the finals will be over and we'll give our thoughts on it as a whole and what it means for the players of each team's going forward. So thanks for sticking out with us. Have a good night. Peace.
As always.